The message arrived on a Tuesday. Dr. Eric Shaw was in his lab at the Global Space Agency when his phone buzzed. The text was simple. "Come to the director's office, now." Eric put down the soil sample he was studying and removed his gloves. He was a tall man with kind eyes and a serious face. At 42, he had become one of Earth's top experts on how living things might survive on other planets. He had never expected to use this knowledge for actual alien contact. He walked through the long white hallways of the research building, nodding to colleagues as he passed. Most gave him curious looks. News traveled fast here, and everyone knew something big was happening. Director Garfield was waiting with 2 military officers when Eric arrived. The director was an older woman with gray hair and a no-nonsense attitude. "Dr. Shaw," she said, gesturing to a chair. "Thank you for coming quickly. What I'm about to tell you is classified at the highest level." Eric sat down, his heart beating faster. "I understand." 3 days ago, an alien vessel entered Earth orbit. The director's voice was calm, as if she were discussing the weather. "They call themselves the Valkyrie Confederation. 7 different alien species working together." Eric blinked several times, trying to process this information. "First contact," he whispered. "Yes," said Director Garfield. "And they've asked for a human representative, someone with knowledge of biology across different environments. Your name came up." One of the military officers, a stern-looking man with a crew cut, slid a folder across the table. "The Valkyrie have invited 5 humans to their ship for diplomatic talks. You've been selected as the scientific expert." Eric opened the folder. Inside were photos of a massive ship in Earth orbit, too geometric and perfect to be human-made. "Why me?" he asked. "You're the best xenobiologist we have," Director Garfield said. "And you have a gift for communication. This isn't just about science, Dr. Shaw. It's about representing our species." Eric looked through the rest of the folder. It contained brief profiles of the other chosen representatives: a diplomat, a cultural expert, a military liaison, and a medical officer. "The medical officer is Lisa Miller," Eric noted. "I worked with her on the Mars preparation project." "Yes," the director nodded. "We wanted people who have some experience working together. You leave in 2 days." 2 days later, Eric found himself in a small transport ship heading up to meet the Valkyrie vessel. Lisa Miller sat beside him, her red hair tied back in a practical ponytail. She had been a military nurse before joining the space program. "Nervous?" she asked, watching Eric stare out the window at the approaching alien ship. "Terrified," Eric admitted. "But excited too. Everything we've ever wondered about. Are we alone? What other life might look like? How it might think. We're about to get answers." The alien ship grew larger in the viewport. It was enormous, at least a mile long, with a sleek design that reminded Eric of ancient sea creatures. Its surface shimmered with a faint blue light. "They call it the Eternal Vigilance," said Carol Peters, the diplomat seated across from them. She was a sharp-eyed woman with decades of international experience. "Interesting name for a diplomatic vessel." The military liaison, Major Alan Clark, frowned. "Names tell you a lot about priorities." Their transport ship entered a docking bay that could have fit 10 such vessels. As the airlock sealed and the all-clear signal came through, Eric took a deep breath. Humanity's first steps into a larger universe. The welcoming committee consisted of 3 different alien species. The one in the center stepped forward, a tall, slender being with 4 arms and pale blue skin covered in subtle patterns that seemed to shift with its movements. Its face had 2 large compound eyes and what appeared to be breathing slits rather than a nose. "I am Ambassador Zetkora," it said in perfect English, its voice coming from a small device on what Eric assumed was its chest. "Welcome aboard. The Eternal Vigilance, flagship of the Valkyrie Confederation." Carol Peters stepped forward. "On behalf of Earth and humanity, we thank you for this historic invitation. I am Diplomat Carol Peters, and these are my colleagues." She introduced each member of the human delegation. Eric noticed something when she introduced him. When the ambassador heard he was a xenobiologist, Its body language changed subtly. A stiffening, perhaps, or a slight movement backward. Fear, concern. It was hard to read alien body language, but Eric had spent his career studying living things, and something about the reaction seemed defensive. The humans were escorted to their quarters, comfortable rooms that had clearly been adjusted to meet human needs, though some details were amusingly wrong. The bed in Eric's room was perfectly flat and hard as a board. The bathroom contained what looked like a shower, but with controls at what would be eye level for a much taller being. Later, the delegation gathered for the first formal meeting with the Valkyrie Leadership Council. 7 representatives, one from each species of the Confederation, sat across from the 5 humans at a large circular table. Eric studied each alien with fascination. Besides the blue-skinned, 4-armed species that Ambassador Jet Cora belonged to, there were beings that looked like large insects, others that resembled reptiles, one that seemed almost plant-like, and 3 others so strange that Eric had no Earth comparison. As the diplomatic team exchanged formal greetings, Eric continued to notice oddities. The aliens maintained perfect politeness, but there was tension in the room. When any human made a sudden movement, several of the aliens would flinch almost imperceptibly. During a break in the proceedings, Eric whispered to Lisa, "They're afraid of us." Lisa looked surprised. "Us? Their ship could probably destroy our entire planet." "I know, it doesn't make sense, but watch their reactions when we move. It's like they're expecting us to attack." The cultural exchange portion of the meeting began, with both sides sharing information about their civilizations. The Valkyrie spoke of their peaceful confederation, formed thousands of years ago. They described their scientific achievements and artistic traditions with obvious pride. When it was humanity's turn, Carol Peters spoke eloquently about Earth's diverse cultures and humanity's achievements. Then she made what seemed to Eric a critical mistake. She was too honest about human history. "We have overcome many challenges," she explained. "Natural disasters, diseases, wars, climate change. Each time, humans have adapted and survived." The atmosphere in the room changed instantly. Eric saw the aliens exchange looks that seemed alarmed. One of them, a reptilian being, leaned over and whispered something to Ambassador Jet Cora. Later, in private, the human delegation discussed the meeting. "They were horrified by our history," Eric said. "The wars especially. I think they see us as dangerous," Major Clark snorted. "We're technological infants compared to them. How could they possibly see us as a threat?" "Maybe it's not about technology," Lisa suggested. "Maybe it's about psychology. The things we've survived would have wiped out their civilizations." Eric nodded slowly. "We need to be careful. There's something happening here that we don't understand yet." That night, Eric couldn't sleep. He stood at the viewport in his room, looking out at the stars and thinking about the strange new reality he found himself in. Humanity was not alone, but their first alien encounter was already complicated by misunderstandings and what seemed like fear. Little did he know that several decks away, Commander Vexthal of Valkyrie Military Intelligence was proposing a test to see just how dangerous humans really were. The second day aboard the Eternal Vigilance started with a tour of the ship. Eric and Lisa walked together behind their alien guide, a junior diplomat from Ambassador Jet Cora's species named Rilvex. The ship was enormous, with vast open spaces and gardens that contained plants from 7 different worlds. "Your ship is beautiful," Eric said, studying a blue flower that seemed to follow their movement like a sunflower tracking the sun. "Thank you," Rilvex replied. "It serves as both our diplomatic vessel and a repository of our combined biological heritage." Lisa had been quiet most of the morning, her eyes darting around more than usual. When they entered a less crowded corridor, she whispered to Eric, "We're being watched." Eric kept his face neutral. "More than the normal diplomatic observation." "Much more. There are scanning devices hidden in the walls. I noticed them in our quarters, too." Before Eric could respond, they reached the ship's medical bay. The room was large and filled with strange equipment. 3 different alien species worked inside, all wearing the same blue uniforms that Eric assumed indicated medical staff. "This is our primary health facility," Rilvex explained. "We hoped Dr. Miller might find it interesting." Lisa smiled politely. "Very much so. Your medical technology seems quite advanced." One of the medical officers, a tall insectoid being with delicate limbs and large compound eyes, approached them. "I am Chief Medical Officer Jixta. Perhaps you would be interested in comparing medical knowledge?" "I would love that," Lisa said. While Lisa spoke with the alien doctor, Eric wandered around the medical bay, looking at the various devices. One section was closed off by a transparent barrier. Inside, several aliens in protective suits worked with what appeared to be gas canisters. "What's happening in there?" Eric asked when Rilvex approached. The alien hesitated before answering. "Research into atmospheric compatibility. All species breathe different mixtures. Understanding these differences is essential for peaceful coexistence." Eric nodded, but something in the alien's tone made him suspicious. Later that afternoon, the human delegation gathered for a private meeting in Carol Peters' quarters. "They're definitely studying us more intensely than normal diplomatic protocol would suggest," Carol said. "Major Clark has identified at least 12 different types of surveillance in our quarters alone." Major Clark leaned forward. "I don't like it. They're treating us more like lab rats than diplomatic partners." "I agree something's off," Lisa added. In the medical bay, they were very interested in human stress responses. Their questions were oddly specific about how we react to fear and danger. Eric shared what he had observed. "I think they genuinely fear us despite their technological superiority. They keep watching our reactions, especially when they mention conflict or danger." "But why?" asked Carol. "We're centuries behind them technologically." "Maybe it's not about technology," Eric suggested. "From what I've gathered, the Valkyrie species evolved in relatively stable environments. They've never faced the kind of extinction-level events that shaped human evolution. Maybe what scares them is our adaptability, our ability to survive conditions that would kill them." Major Clark snorted. "So they're afraid we're too tough?" "Essentially, yes," Eric replied. "Think about it. We come from a planet with extreme temperature variations, natural disasters, predators, disease. We've survived it all. That might seem terrifying to species that evolved in more stable conditions." Their discussion was interrupted by a message from Ambassador Zetkora, inviting Eric to participate in what was described as atmospheric compatibility testing. Eric met the ambassador in a small laboratory. 2 other aliens were present wearing what appeared to be scientific attire. One was from the insectoid species, the other reptilian. "Dr. Shaw," the ambassador said, "these are researchers Kizvok and Trenlar. They are interested in human environmental adaptability." Eric smiled. "Happy to help. What kind of testing did you have in mind?" The reptilian alien, Trenlar, gestured to a small chamber connected to the room by a transparent door. "A simple procedure. We would like to measure your physiological responses to various atmospheric conditions." Eric looked at the chamber cautiously. "Is it safe?" "Completely," Ambassador Zetkora assured him. "We have analyzed human biological requirements extensively. No combination will be harmful." Eric hesitated but finally nodded. "All right." He entered the chamber, which was about the size of a small bathroom. The door sealed behind him with a soft hiss. Inside was a comfortable chair and several monitoring devices. "Please be seated." Trenlar's voice came through a speaker. "We will begin with standard atmosphere and make minor adjustments. If you feel uncomfortable at any point, simply raise your hand." Eric sat down. The air felt normal at first. Then he noticed a slight change. A faint smell that reminded him of something from his childhood. It grew stronger, an odd mix of industrial, chemicals, and something almost like burnt cinnamon. Through the transparent wall, Eric could see the aliens watching him intently. They seemed tense, their bodies rigid. One was operating controls while the others observed monitors. They appeared to be expecting something dramatic to happen. The smell grew stronger, and Eric felt a slight tingling in his nose and throat. But instead of fear or panic, he felt an odd sense of nostalgia. The smell was unpleasant but strangely familiar. "Is everything all right, Dr. Shaw?" Ambassador Jet Cora asked through the speaker. The alien's voice contained barely concealed tension. Eric nodded. "Yes, fine. The air has an interesting smell." "Can you describe your emotional state?" Trenlar asked. Eric thought for a moment. Curious, a bit nostalgic actually. The aliens exchanged looks that Eric couldn't interpret. "Nostalgic?" The ambassador repeated, sounding confused. "Yes," Eric said. "This smell, it reminds me of my childhood neighborhood in Cleveland. There was a factory near our house that sometimes released chemicals that smelled similar." He inhaled deeply. "Smells like home, in a weird way." The reaction among the aliens was immediate and dramatic. Trenlar took several quick steps backward. The insectoid researcher made a high-pitched sound that the translation device didn't catch. Ambassador Zet Cora's skin patterns shifted rapidly, changing from blue to a pale green. "That will be all for today," the ambassador said abruptly. "Please exit the chamber." The air cleared quickly and the door opened. When Eric stepped out, he noticed the aliens maintained more distance from him than before. "Was that the reaction you expected?" Eric asked. Ambassador Jetkora's composure returned quickly. "All data is valuable, Dr. Shaw. Thank you for your participation." Eric was escorted back to his quarters where he immediately went to find Lisa. "They just tested some kind of gas on me," he told her. "They expected it to scare me, I think. When it didn't, they seemed shocked." Lisa's eyes widened. "Fear gas? That's what all these tests have been about? They're trying to find what scares humans?" "I think so," Eric said. And they seemed disturbed that their best shot didn't work. That evening, in a secure chamber deep within the military section of the ship, Commander Vexthal met with his science team. The commander was from the reptilian species with scales that shifted from green to black depending on his mood. Currently, they were very dark. "Explain this failure," he demanded. Researcher Trenlar lowered his head. The human showed no fear. Response to the R-17 compound, instead he claimed it reminded him of his home. "Impossible," Vexthal hissed. "R-17 triggers terror responses in all 7 Confederation species. It targets primitive brain functions." "Perhaps human brain structure is more different than we thought," suggested another scientist. Vexthal paced the room. "Or perhaps they come from a world so terrible that our worst fears are their normal conditions." He stopped and turned to his team. "Increase the testing. I want to know what these humans are capable of, and what they fear, if they fear anything at all." Back in his quarters, Eric looked out at the stars again. He couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed today, that the strange gas test had altered how the aliens saw humans, and not for the better. Eric woke to the sound of an alarm. Red lights flashed in his quarters and a voice spoke in the Valkyrie language before switching to English. "Emergency protocols activated. All personnel report to designated safety areas." He jumped out of bed and quickly dressed. The door to his quarters slid open, revealing Lisa already in the hallway. "What's happening?" he asked. "No idea," she replied. "But our alien friends look terrified." Valkyrie crew members rushed past them, their movements quick and jerky. Eric noticed their skin patterns shifting to colors he hadn't seen before. "Ambassador?" Jetkora appeared, moving against the flow of traffic. "Dr. Shaw, Dr. Miller, please come with me." The ambassador led them to a large room where the rest of the human delegation waited. Major Clark looked annoyed, while Carol Peters maintained her diplomatic composure. "What's the emergency?" Major Clark demanded. "A minor ship malfunction," Ambassador Zetkora explained. "Standard safety protocols require all guests to gather in secure areas." As the ambassador spoke, Eric noticed something strange about the room. There were cameras in every corner, more than seemed necessary for security. "Is this another test?" Eric whispered to Lisa. Before she could answer, the lights went out. The room plunged into complete darkness. Eric heard gasps from the Valkyrie, crew members present, but the humans remained calm. Emergency lights came on 30 seconds later, casting an eerie blue glow. Ambassador Zetkora stood perfectly still, the patterns on their skin almost white. "Apologies," the ambassador said. "The backup system should have engaged immediately." "No harm done," Carol replied smoothly. "A brief power outage is hardly cause for concern." Eric watched the ambassador's reaction carefully. There was something like confusion in those alien eyes. The emergency ended 20 minutes later. As they were escorted back to their quarters, Eric pulled Lisa aside. "That was definitely a test," he said. "They wanted to see how we'd react to sudden darkness." Lisa nodded. "I overheard 2 crew members talking. Their translation devices were still working. One said something like, they didn't show any fear response." "We need to talk to the others," Eric said. The human delegation gathered in Major Clark's quarters after breakfast. Eric and Lisa shared their suspicions. First the fear gas, now this fake emergency, Eric explained. "They're testing our responses to things they find frightening." Major Clark scowled. "So what? Let them play their games." "It's more serious than that," Lisa said. "I've been observing the medical staff. After the gas test failed, there was a lot of activity in their research division. I think some faction among the Valkyrie sees us as a potential threat." Carol Peters looked thoughtful. "They invited us here to evaluate us, not just for diplomatic relations." "Exactly," Eric agreed. "And so far we're failing their tests, or passing them depending on your perspective. They expose us to their worst fears, and we shrug them off." "We should confront them," Major Clark suggested. "No," Carol said firmly. "That could escalate the situation. For now we play along, but we should be more aware of what's happening." Later that day, Ambassador Zetkora invited Eric to join a cultural exchange activity. He was led to a simulation room where several Valkyrie waited. "We have created environments from various worlds," the ambassador explained. "We thought you might enjoy experiencing different planetary conditions." Eric smiled. "That sounds fascinating." The first simulation showed a beautiful landscape with rolling hills and twin suns in a purple sky. Eric walked through it, genuinely impressed by the technology. "This is your homeworld?" he asked. "One region of it," the ambassador confirmed, "a place of peace and beauty." The simulation changed. Now Eric stood on what appeared to be a narrow bridge over an enormous chasm. The bridge swayed slightly. Wind howled around him. He could see the Valkyrie watching from a control room through a window. They leaned forward, clearly expecting a reaction. Eric walked to the middle of the bridge and looked down. The chasm seemed bottomless. He then did something that made the observers visibly recoil. He sat down on the edge of the bridge, letting his feet dangle over the void. "The view is spectacular," he called out. "Is this another Valkyrie world?" The simulation ended abruptly. The next one placed Eric in a tiny enclosed space, barely large enough to stand in. The walls seemed to be closing in slowly. Instead of panicking, Eric examined the walls with interest. "Fascinating texture," he commented. "Is this meant to simulate a natural formation?" Through the control room window, Eric could see the Valkyrie researchers conferring urgently. Ambassador Jetkora's skin had taken on that pale color again. When the simulations ended, Eric was escorted back to the main diplomatic area. He found Lisa waiting for him. "Another test?" she asked quietly. "Heights and enclosed spaces," Eric confirmed. "Things they apparently find terrifying." "They had me in the medical bay again," Lisa said. "This time they showed me images of various disasters and monitored my responses. I think they were shocked that I didn't react strongly to scenes of storms and floods." That evening, deep in the military section of the ship, Commander Vexithal met with the Confederation Council via holographic link. 7 beings, representing each species of the Valkyrie, listened as he presented his findings. "The humans show abnormal psychological patterns," Vexithal explained. "They exhibit minimal fear response to stimuli that would incapacitate any of our species. The gas that targets terror centers in all our brains had no effect. Darkness, heights, confinement, nothing produces the expected fear reaction." "Perhaps their physiology is simply too different," suggested one council member, a plant-like being with glowing tendrils. No, Vexisthal insisted. Our tests of their brain chemistry show similar neurotransmitters to our own. The difference is psychological, not physiological. They have adapted to fear. That's impossible, said another council member. No sentient species can adapt to primal fear. It's a survival mechanism. These humans come from a death world, Vexthal said grimly. Their planet has extreme weather, natural disasters, thousands of predator species, and endless wars. They've been living with fear for their entire evolutionary history. What do you recommend? Asked the head counselor. More extensive testing, Vexthal replied, and preparation for containment if necessary. A species that feels no fear may be capable of anything. Meanwhile, Ambassador Jetkora sat alone in private quarters, reviewing the test results. Unlike Vexthal, the ambassador felt growing concern about the military's approach to the humans. After much consideration, Jetkora made a decision. The ambassador would warn the humans about what was happening. Lisa was surprised when her door chimed late that night. She opened it to find Ambassador Jetkora standing there, alone. "May I enter?" the ambassador asked. "What I have to say cannot be overheard." Lisa hesitated but stepped aside. "Of course." Once inside, Jetkora spoke quietly. "You and your colleagues are in danger. Commander Vexthal believes humans are too unpredictable to be allowed free access to the galaxy. The tests you've been subjected to were meant to find your weaknesses. But we don't have the weaknesses you expected," Lisa said. "Exactly, and that terrifies many in our leadership." The ambassador's skin shifted to a deep blue. "I believe peaceful contact with humans is possible, but I am now in the minority. You need to be prepared for more extreme tests." "Why are you telling me this?" Lisa asked. "Because I have studied your species more thoroughly than the others. You are different, yes, but not the monsters Vexthal believes you to be." The ambassador moved toward the door. "Tell the others, but be careful. You are being watched constantly." After the ambassador left, Lisa immediately went to find Eric. Eric listened carefully as Lisa explained what Ambassador Jetkora had told her. They sat in Eric's quarters, speaking in low voices despite knowing they were likely being monitored. "We need to tell the others," Eric said when she finished. "Already did. Carol wants us all to meet for breakfast to discuss our options." Eric nodded. "Do you trust the ambassador?" Lisa thought for a moment. Yes, there was genuine concern there. Not all the Valkyrie view us as threats. The next morning, the human delegation gathered in the dining area assigned to them. They kept their conversation casual, aware of the watching eyes and listening devices. "So," Carol said lightly, buttering a piece of bread, "what shall we do about our host's little tests?" Major Clark leaned back in his chair. "I say we give them something to really worry about. Show them what humans are actually capable of." "That would only confirm their fears," Eric argued. "We need to change their perception, not reinforce it." Lisa stirred her coffee thoughtfully. "The ambassador suggested more extreme tests are coming. We should be prepared." "What if," Eric said slowly, "instead of just reacting to their tests, we start sharing some information of our own? Give them a new perspective on humanity." Carol looked interested. "What did you have in mind?" Before Eric could answer, Ambassador Jetkora appeared at their table. "Good morning. I hope you rested well." The ambassador's skin showed subtle patterns of anxiety. "Commander Vexthal has requested your presence for a special demonstration of Valkyrie technology." The humans exchanged quick glances. "We'd be delighted," Carol replied smoothly. They were led to a large chamber Eric hadn't seen before. It looked like a military training facility. Commander Vexisthal waited for them, his black scales gleaming under the lights. Several other military personnel stood nearby. "Welcome," the commander said, his translation device giving his voice a cold, metallic quality. "The Confederation Council believes it would be beneficial for you to understand our defensive capabilities." "We appreciate the transparency," Carol replied diplomatically. Vexthal gestured to a viewing area. Please observe. A demonstration began, showing weapon systems that made the humans' military technology look primitive. Force fields, energy weapons, and drones that could disintegrate targets in seconds. Eric noticed that Vexthal watched their reactions closely. The commander seemed disappointed when the humans showed interest, but no fear. Impressive technology, Major Clark commented. Very efficient. Vexthal's scales darkened. Indeed, we have eliminated warfare among our species through overwhelming deterrence. An interesting approach, Eric said. Humans have found that fear alone rarely prevents conflict. Sometimes it causes it. The commander turned his full attention to Eric. You speak of fear as if you understand it, yet your responses suggest otherwise. Eric met the alien's gaze steadily. We understand fear very well, Commander. We've just learned to live with it rather than be controlled by it. Explain, Vexthal demanded. Eric looked at Carol, who nodded slightly. Humans evolved on a planet that tried to kill us every day, Eric began. Natural disasters, predators, disease, resource scarcity. Fear was our constant companion. But instead of running from it, we learned to use it. Fear sharpens our focus. It drives innovation. Sometimes, we even seek it out voluntarily. Impossible, one of the other military officials said. Not at all, Lisa joined in. Humans often engage in activities specifically because they trigger fear responses. We call it entertainment or sport. Climbing mountains, diving into oceans, riding fast vehicles. The fear is part of the experience. Eric could see the confusion among the Valkyrie. Ambassador Jet Cora, standing slightly apart from the military group, showed patterns of intense interest. You choose to feel fear? Jet Cora asked. Sometimes, Eric confirmed. We even have entertainment specifically designed to frighten us. We call them horror stories or movies. This revelation caused visible distress among the Valkyrie. Vexthal's scales turned almost black. A species that seeks out fear is unpredictable and dangerous, the commander stated flatly. This confirms our concerns. Or, Ambassador Jetkora suggested, it explains their resilience and adaptability, qualities that could be valuable to the Confederation. Vexthal made a dismissive gesture. The Council will make that determination. For now, the tests must continue. When they returned to their quarters, Eric found that his personal items had been searched. His tablet was missing, and his clothes had been moved. Lisa reported the same. They're getting more aggressive. I think Vexthal is losing patience with us. That evening, as Eric prepared for bed, his room door slid open without warning. 2 Valkyrie security officers entered. Dr. Shaw, you will come with us, one stated. May I ask why? Eric kept his voice calm. Commander's orders. Immediate. Eric followed them through darkened corridors to a section of the ship he hadn't seen before. They entered a room that looked like an interrogation chamber. Commander Vexthal waited inside with 2 other officials. Leave us, Vexthal ordered the guards. Once they were alone, the commander activated a device that projected images on the wall, pictures of Earth, human cities, and military installations. We have been observing your planet for some time, Vexthal said. Your species is chaotic, violent, and unpredictable. Yet our standard evaluation methods fail to determine your threat level. We're not a threat, Eric said firmly. We're seeking peaceful contact. Perhaps, the commander replied, but your psychological makeup concerns us. A species that has adapted to fear, even seeks it out, defies our understanding of sentient behavior. Different doesn't mean dangerous, Eric argued. History suggests otherwise. Vexthal moved closer. I want you to explain human warfare. Your planet has had thousands of wars, yet you claim to want peace. Explain this contradiction. Eric realized this was perhaps the most important moment of the entire mission. How he answered might determine humanity's future relationship with the Valkyrie. Humans fight for many reasons, he began carefully. Resources, territory, beliefs. But we also strive for peace, create art, care for each other. We contain contradictions, capacity for both great harm and great good. This makes you unpredictable, Vexthal insisted. It makes us adaptable, Eric countered. We learn from our mistakes. Our history of conflict has taught us the value of cooperation. The questioning continued for hours. Eric explained human nature as best he could, trying to help the alien understand that humanity's comfort with fear wasn't a sign of danger, but of resilience. Finally, exhausted, Eric was returned to his quarters. He found Lisa waiting outside his door. What happened? She asked urgently. Vexthal wanted to understand human warfare. I think he's preparing a report for his council, arguing that we're too dangerous for regular contact. Ambassador Zet Cora found me, Lisa said. There's been a development. The military faction is gaining influence. They're suggesting containment, protocols for Earth. Eric's blood ran cold. Quarantine? Or worse? Lisa nodded grimly. The ambassador is trying to help but needs our assistance. There's a division among the Valkyrie about how to handle humans. We need to change their perspective, Eric said. And quickly. Jet Cora suggests we use their fear against them, Lisa said quietly. Not to threaten, but to educate. The ambassador believes if we can help them understand our relationship, with fear it might change everything. Eric thought for a moment. I have an idea, but it's risky. At this point, Lisa said, what do we have to lose? Morning came quickly. Eric had barely slept, going over his plan again and again. When the human delegation gathered for breakfast, he explained what he wanted to do. It's risky, he admitted. But if we don't change their perspective soon, we might find Earth under quarantine or worse. Carol considered the idea carefully. You're proposing to deliberately trigger their fear response, but in a controlled way that helps them understand us better? Yes, Eric nodded. Ambassador Zet Cora has agreed to help. We'll request a formal presentation to the full Confederation Council. Instead of letting them test us, we'll show them exactly who we are. Major Clark looked skeptical. And you think this will make them less afraid of us, showing them our darkest aspects? Not just our darkest, Lisa pointed out. Our whole truth. How we face fear and grow from it. How it shapes us without controlling us. Carol made the decision. Let's do it. I'll request the meeting. 2 hours later, they received word that the council had agreed to hear them. The meeting would take place that afternoon in the ship's Grand Assembly Chamber. As they prepared, Ambassador Zet Cora visited them privately. Commander Vexthal has significant support on the council, the ambassador warned. 7 representatives, 1 from each species. 4 currently favor containment protocols for Earth. Then we need to convince at least 2 to change their minds, Eric said. It will be difficult. Jet Cora's skin patterns showed concern. Fear is not just an emotion for us. It is the foundation of our civilization. We built our society by avoiding things that frighten us. While we built ours by facing them, Lisa said quietly. The assembly chamber was large and circular with the 7 council members seated on an elevated platform. The room was filled with other Valkyrie officials and crew members. Commander Vexthal stood to one side, his scales darker than usual. Carol Peters spoke first, thanking the council for the opportunity. Then she introduced Eric, who would give the main presentation. Eric stepped forward, feeling the weight of responsibility. The future relationship between humanity and the Valkyrie might depend on what he said next. Honored council members, he began. I understand you have concerns about humans. You've tested our responses to things your species find frightening, and our reactions have confused you. Today I want to explain why. He activated a display device Ambassador Zet Cora had provided. It showed images of Earth, beautiful landscapes, but also natural disasters, predators, and historical images of human conflicts. This is the world that shaped us, Eric explained. A planet of beauty and danger. From our earliest days, we lived with fear as a constant companion. He showed more images. Early humans huddled around fires, fighting predators, developing tools. Fear didn't paralyze us. It taught us. It showed us what we needed to overcome. Every threat pushed us to adapt, to innovate, to become stronger. Eric could see the council members shifting uncomfortably, but he continued, moving to more recent human history. We've faced extinction many times, disease, war, climate change. Each time, fear warned us of danger. But it was our choice whether to run from it or face it. We chose to face it. Now came the risky part. Eric had asked Ambassador Jet Cora to prepare specific examples that would challenge the Valkyrie perspective. You showed us your fear gas, expecting us to be incapacitated by terror. I told you it smelled like home, let me explain why. He displayed images of industrial cities, pollution, difficult living conditions. Many humans grow up in places that would terrify you, not because we want to, but because we must. We adapt. We find beauty and meaning even in harsh conditions. We learn to breathe the air that would frighten you and call it home. Eric paused, looking at each council member. You showed us darkness, heights, confined spaces, things your evolution taught you to fear. Our evolution taught us different lessons. We climb mountains for joy. We explore caves for discovery. We seek the stars despite the dangers. One council member, the plant-like being, spoke up. But your history shows constant conflict. You turn your lack of fear into weapons against each other. Yes, Eric acknowledged honestly. We have fought countless wars, but from each one we learned. After our most devastating conflicts, we created institutions for peace. We recognized that our greatest strength isn't fearlessness. It's our ability to change, to grow beyond our worst impulses. Commander Vexthal stepped forward. This presentation only confirms the danger humans pose. A species that does not properly fear is unpredictable and cannot be trusted. Or, Eric countered, a species that understands fear rather than being controlled by it can be your greatest ally. The universe is full of dangers. Wouldn't you want friends who can face them alongside you? The chamber fell silent. Eric could see the council members confer,